There's a very specific feeling that only early 2000s PC and console gaming could give you. It was a time of experimentation where developers didn't hold your hand and puzzles required actual trial and error. And no series captured that raw, experimental energy quite like the original Hitman quadrilogy. These are the old school Hitman games, but are they enjoyable today?
In an era where stealth usually meant sticking to the shadows like a cartoon ninja, IO Interactive arrived in 2000 with a radical, almost clinical proposition. Hitman, Codename 47. This wasn't just a game about hiding, it was the birth of social stealth, a world where the most dangerous place for a killer was in plain sight, wearing the face of a waiter or a bodyguard. Looking back at Codename 47 today is like examining a rough diamond. It is a work of high-concept genius trapped inside a shell of brutal Eurojank that can be as infuriating as it is fascinating. The story remains one of the series' strongest pillars. We meet a nameless, barcode-tattooed clone waking up in a sterile Romanian asylum. Guided by a mysterious voice over an intercom, we learn the ropes of murder before venturing into the world as a freelancer for the ICA. The narrative arc, taking us from the neon-soaked alleys of Hong Kong to the oppressive jungles of Colombia and the high society opulence of Budapest, culminates in a Shakespearean revelation about 47's five fathers. It's dark, pulpy, and surprisingly coherent for an early 2000s PC title. While modern Hitman titles are murder sandboxes, Codename 47 is more of a lethal logic puzzle. The game begins in a cold, sterile basement of a sanitarium in Romania. A man wakes up strapped to a bed, guided by a mysterious, disembodied voice over a loudspeaker. This voice teaches him the basics of killing and moving. This man has no name, only a barcode tattooed on the back of his head. After testing his abilities, the voice allows 47 to escape the facility. This wasn't an accident, it was a release. 1 year later, 47 is a top-tier assassin for the ICA, International Contract Agency. His handler, Diana Burnwood, sends him across the globe to eliminate 4 major underworld kingpins. At first, these seem like random hits, but a pattern begins to emerge. Unlike the modern World of Assassination trilogy, which offers massive open maps, Codename 47 follows a strictly linear mission progression. However, the internal structure of each mission is a mini sandbox. Before entering the field, you are given a dossier. Unique to this first game is a budget system. You earn money from hits and use it to purchase specific weapons and ammo. If you're a bad assassin and kill civilians, your pay gets docked. Most maps are divided into public and restricted zones. The structure forces you to find a way to cross these thresholds without alerting guards. Each target has a routine, though much simpler than in later games. The goal is to isolate them or use environmental hazards, like the infamous car bomb in the Kowloon Triads mission. The disguise system was revolutionary. The ability to kill a guard, take his clothes, and walk through the front door changed everything. However, the AI is notoriously twitchy. One wrong step or a second too long in a guard's line of sight, and the entire map turns into a shooting gallery. There are no mid-mission saves. If you spend 20 minutes meticulously setting up a sniper shot in Kowloon Triads in Gang War, and a stray bullet catches you at the exit, you start from zero. This creates a tension that is genuinely suffocating, but it often tips over into frustration. This game also introduced the world to ragdoll physics. Seeing a body slump realistically down a flight of stairs was a next-gen moment in 2000. Combined with the signature fiber wire and the dual silver ballers, the tactile feel of the hits was light years ahead of its peers.
Hi, I have an appointment with Dr. Kovacs. My name is Tobias Reaper.
Let me check. That's right. Come in through the door over here. Follow me. The doctor's office is up these stairs, second floor. The door to your right and then goes straight through the operating theater.
You cannot talk about this game without mentioning Jesper Kyd. His soundtrack is the soul of the experience. The music shifts from haunting, ambient synths in the Hong Kong sewers to cinematic, orchestral swells in the hotels. It lends 47 an aura of cold, detached professionalism that the graphics, now consisting of sharp-edged polygons and muddy texture, can no longer convey on their own. To be blunt, Codename 47 has not aged gracefully in the traditional sense. The default key bindings are a nightmare, and 47 moves with the turning circle of a freight truck. The mid-game excursion to South America is widely considered a low point, pivoting from clever stealth to a clunky third-person shooter in a foggy green void, and IO Interactive themselves rendered much of this game obsolete with Contracts, which remade the best levels of this game with better mechanics. However, there is a raw, unfiltered atmosphere here that the sequels never quite recaptured. There is a coldness to the original Glacier engine, a sense of isolation and clinical cruelty that makes 47 feel like a true predator rather than a dry-witted protagonist. Codename 47 is a flawed masterpiece. It is the architectural blueprint for an entire genre, containing all the DNA that would eventually lead to the perfection of the World of Assassination trilogy. It's a difficult game to recommend to a casual player today, but for a student of gaming history or a die-hard fan of the bald assassin, it is a mandatory pilgrimage. It's janky, it's mean, and it's unyielding, but it's where the legend began. And that's the story of how a bald clone with a barcode changed the stealth genre forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the roots of the ICA, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more retrospective reviews. What's your favorite Hitman mission of all time? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, stay sharp. And remember, leave no witnesses. See ya. To truly understand the DNA of the modern stealth genre, you have to look back at the moment Agent 47 stepped out of the shadows of the fringe and into the limelight of gaming royalty. In 2002, Hitman 2 Silent Assassin didn't just iterate on its predecessor, it essentially invented the social stealth subgenre as we know it today. It transformed the hitman from a clunky contract killer into a ghost in the machine. The game begins in the most unlikely of places, a humble Sicilian monastery. We find Agent 47 attempting to outrun his past, working as a simple gardener under the guidance of Father Vittorio. It's a rare moment of humanity for a man bred in a lab to be a weapon. But when the Mafia kidnaps Vittorio to draw 47 back into the fold, the ghost has no choice but to contact his former handlers at the ICA. What follows is a globe-trotting odyssey that takes us from the snowy streets of St. Petersburg to the neon-drenched districts of Japan and the desert heat of Afghanistan. The story isn't just a backdrop, it's a justification for the game's sheer variety. It's personal, but it's professional, and it perfectly sets the stage for a game that is as much about the why as it is the how. The prequel was a cold, clinical origin story. 47 was a clone who escaped a lab, killed his fathers, and that was that. Silent Assassin injects a surprising amount of pathos into a bald man with a barcode. By starting 47 in the Gontrano Sanctuary in Sicily, the game gives him a motivation beyond money for the ICA. He is a man trying to be good, seeking absolution through gardening and prayer. When his mentor, Father Vittorio, is snatched away, 47's return to the world of contract killing feels tragic rather than just mercenary. This narrative hook makes the missions feel like a desperate search rather than a checklist of chores. The story also introduces Diana Burnwood as a more defined presence, cementing the professional intimacy between the handler and the assassin that defines the series to this day. If Codename 47 felt like a series of corridors, Hitman 2 felt like an atlas. The game famously broke its levels into geographic hubs, and the jump in quality was staggering. You go from the sun-baked villas of Sicily to the snowy, paranoid atmosphere of St. Petersburg, then to the verticality of a Japanese hidden fortress, and finally, the claustrophobic bazaars of Afghanistan. This was the first time we saw levels designed with multiple points of entry and soft paths. In the mission Anathema, you could sneak in as a delivery man, snipe the dawn from a hill, or climb the balcony as a guard. Unlike the prequel, which often devolved into mandatory shootouts, Silent Assassin designed every level to be ghostable. The tension of walking through the Kirov Park meeting, knowing a single run or a bumped shoulder could end your run, remains one of the most stressful experiences in early 2000s gaming. One of the biggest functional improvements was the introduction of non-lethal options. In the prequel, if someone was in your way, they usually had to die. Silent Assassin introduced the anesthetic. It was notoriously slow. 47 had to stand behind a guard for what felt like an eternity to apply it. But it changed the morality of the game. It allowed for the ghost run. Combined with the new first-person mode and the ability to look through keyholes, the game shifted from action-adventure to a simulated assassination. You weren't just playing a level, you were infiltrating a living, breathing ecosystem. The brilliance of Silent Assassin lies in its rejection of the kill-everything mentality of early 2000s shooters. Instead, it introduced the world to the suspicion meter. This wasn't just a bar on the UI. It was a living representation of your social standing. If you ran while dressed as a guard, people noticed. If you stood too close to a colleague who didn't recognize your face, the tension spiked. This created a slow burn tension that few games have ever replicated. You weren't just sneaking behind crates, you were hiding in plain sight. The disguise system became the core loop. You'd find a delivery man, pacify him, using the notoriously slow-acting anesthetic, take his clothes, and suddenly the front door, previously a death trap, became an invitation. But the game was never a stroll in the park. The AI in Hitman 2 was famously prickly. A single wrong turn or a weapon held too visibly could turn a surgical strike into a bloodbath. This fragility of the perfect run is what made the gameplay so addictive. You weren't just playing a level, you were solving a lethal clockwork puzzle. You have to stop thinking like a gamer and start thinking like an intruder. In most titles from 2002, gameplay meant mastering a jump or a recoil pattern. In Hitman 2, gameplay is the art of observation and patience. It's a wait-'em-out simulator where the core loop isn't about the kill, but about the 20 minutes of agonizing tension that lead up to it. The engine of this game is the suspicion meter, and it is one of the most stressful UI elements ever conceived. Unlike traditional stealth games where being in a guard's line of sight is an instant game over, Hitman 2 allows you to be seen, provided you look the part. However, the social aspect is fragile. The game uses a proximity-based suspicion system. If you wear a guard's uniform but stand too close to another guard, he'll realize he doesn't recognize your face. If you run, you draw attention. If you have the wrong weapon drawn, you're dead. This creates a unique physical sensation while playing. You find yourself gently tilting the analog stick or tapping the W key, trying to walk with a nothing to see here gait, while your heart is hammering because a guard is staring a hole through the back of your head. Every level in Silent Assassin is a living diorama. NPCs aren't just standing around, they have routines. A chef in a basement will chop vegetables, go to the pantry, and then step outside for a smoke. A target in a high-rise will take a phone call, go to the window, and then head to the bathroom. Gameplay, therefore, is about finding the gap in the gears. You spend the first 10 minutes of a mission just watching. You peek through keyholes, a mechanic that feels voyeuristic and vital, to see if the coast is clear. You learn that the guard on the second floor turns his back for exactly 6 seconds every 2 minutes. That 6-second window is your entire game. The game offers an arsenal of weapons, but the gameplay subtly discourages 90% of them. You have the fiber wire, which is the series signature, silent, slow, and requiring you to be inches away. Then there's the anesthetic, which introduced a non-lethal but temporary way to remove obstacles. The brilliance of the mechanical design is that the best way to play is often the most difficult. Sniping a target from a mile away is satisfying, but it often alerts the entire map. Poisoning a drink and walking out the front door before the body is even found? That's the true Hitman experience. Progression in Hitman 2 isn't about leveling up stats or gaining XP. It's about mastery and collection. At the end of every mission, you are judged. The game tracks how many shots you fired, how many innocents you killed, and how many times you were spotted. If you're messy, you get ratings like mass murderer or sloppy butcher. But if you kill only the target and leave no witnesses, you earn the silent assassin rating. This is where the progression becomes tangible. Between missions, 47 returns to his shed in the Sicilian monastery. Every time you finish a mission carrying a weapon you didn't start with, that weapon is added to your collection on the wall. Earning the silent assassin rating on missions unlocks special silenced gear, like the silver ballers or the sawed-off shotgun, that you can't get anywhere else. There is a deep psychological satisfaction in watching that empty shed slowly fill with silenced pistols, sniper rifles, and specialized blades. It turns the game into a completionist's dream. The game's difficulty settings don't just make enemies tougher, they change the rules of engagement. On normal, you have several saves and a generous map that shows enemy locations in real time. On professional, you have 0 mid-mission saves, and the map only shows the target. This forces a natural progression in the player's skill. You start by leaning on the map and saves, but by the end of the game, you've memorized the patrol routes and the layout so well that you don't need the UI anymore. You become the professional. The game's title isn't just a name, it's a challenge. Progression in Hitman 2 is tied directly to your performance. While you could blast your way through with the iconic dual silver ballers, the game rewarded those who left no trace. Achieving the coveted silent assassin rating, which required finishing a mission with no more than 2 kills, the targets, and without being detected, was the ultimate badge of honor. Successfully doing so didn't just give you a pat on the back. It unlocked bonus weapons like the silenced ballers or the lethal crossbow. This created a brilliant feedback loop. Be better at stealth, and the game gives you better tools to be even more surgical. It turned the game into a collection of trophy runs. Your save file became a museum of perfection, housed in the tool shed at the Sicilian sanctuary, which slowly filled with the weapons you'd successfully exfiltrated from missions. The mission rating system is the psychological engine of the game. At the end of every level, you are greeted with a bar graph and a title. This screen is essentially a digital autopsy of your performance. Achieving Silent Assassin is the only way to unlock the game's most specialized equipment. This creates a brilliant carrot and stick dynamic. The game gives you the tools of a professional only after you have proven you don't actually need them to succeed. Perhaps the most important layer of progression in Hitman 2 is the player's own psychological evolution. When you first play a level like Invitation to a Party, you are likely panicked. You're running through hallways, accidentally bumping into guards, and inevitably ending the mission in a frantic shootout. But as you understand the mechanics, your progression becomes mental. You stop looking for the exit and start looking for the opportunity. You realize that you don't need to kill the guard. You just need to wait for him to check his watch. You learn that the Silent Assassin rating isn't a chore. It's the most efficient way to play. By the time you reach the final levels in India and the return to Sicily, you aren't playing a game anymore. You're executing a rehearsed, lethal dance. IO Interactive's proprietary Glacier engine was doing things in 2002 that felt years ahead of the competition. It wasn't just about the resolution, it was about the atmosphere of place. The game's visual progression is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. You start in the warm, dusty, sepia-toned hills of Sicily, where the sun feels oppressive and the shadows of the monastery offer the only safety. Then, the game pivots to the cold, blue-gray desolation of St. Petersburg. You can almost feel the frost on Agent 47's coat as the snow falls in thick, heavy flakes that actually obscure your vision, a visual trick that doubled as a gameplay mechanic. The character model of 47 himself became iconic here. The way his suit jacket fluttered as he ran, the cold glint of his bald head, and the stiff, clinical precision of his animations all served the professional fantasy. He looked like a shark in a tuxedo, out of place in a crowd, yet perfectly camouflaged by his own poise. We cannot talk about Hitman 2 without mentioning Jesper Kyd. The soundtrack elevated the experience from a video game to an operatic thriller. The haunting, choral themes of the main menu and the pulsing, rhythmic tension of the missions gave the game a sense of weight and prestige. Visually, for 2002, the game was a marvel. Whether it was the way snow gathered on 47's coat or the atmospheric lighting of a Malaysian basement, the game felt lived in. It had an atmosphere that was cold, calculated, and deeply lonely, exactly how an assassin's world should feel. Beyond the music, the sound design is a vital gameplay tool. In 2002, directional audio was still evolving, but Hitman 2 used it brilliantly. You learn to navigate by ear, and of course, there is David Bateson. His voice work as Agent 47, deadpan, monotone, and utterly devoid of empathy, provided the perfect anchor. When he speaks, it's rarely more than a few words, but the delivery is so chillingly professional that it makes the player feel like they are inhabiting a man who has truly left his humanity behind. What made Hitman 2 so important visually and orally is that it didn't just try to look real, it tried to look cinematic. It borrowed the lighting of film noir and the soundscapes of a high-budget thriller. Even today, if you close your eyes and hear that main menu theme, you can see the barcode and the red tie perfectly. So why do we still talk about a game that's over 2 decades old? Because Silent Assassin provided the blueprint. Without this game, there is no Blood Money, and there is certainly no modern World of Assassination trilogy. It taught the industry that stealth didn't have to mean hiding in the dark. It proved that players were willing to spend 40 minutes walking slowly and observing patrol routes for a 10-second window of opportunity. It respected the player's intelligence and patience. Even today, the St. Petersburg Stakeout or Anathema missions stand as masterclasses in level design, offering multiple paths, accidental kills, and a sense of agency that many modern titles still struggle to match. Hitman 2 is a reminder that the most powerful weapon isn't a sniper rifle or a bomb. It's a well-timed disguise and a quiet exit. Ultimately, Hitman 2 Silent Assassin is more than just a nostalgic trip down a blood-stained memory lane. It's the definitive blueprint for the entire social stealth genre. While the original game had the ideas, this was the entry that gave Agent 47 a soul. Even if that soul was encased in a cold, polyester suit and a 20-digit barcode. If I'm being completely candid with you, playing this game in 2026 isn't always a walk in the park. The AI can be psychic. The movement can feel like 47 is walking through waist-deep honey, and those sniper-guarded levels in Japan still feel like they were designed by someone who holds a personal grudge against the player. But none of that diminishes its importance. Hitman 2 succeeded because it respected us. It didn't hold our hands with waypoint markers or detective vision. It gave us a map, a fiber wire, and the autonomy to fail until we learned how to succeed. It turned the act of waiting into a high-stakes mechanical hook. When you finally see that Silent Assassin rating crawl across the screen after a 40-minute mission, it isn't just a high score. It's a shot of pure, unadulterated dopamine. But I want to hear from you. Is Silent Assassin still the high watermark for the franchise? Or do those psychic Japanese snipers make it too frustrating to revisit in 2026? Drop a comment below. I'm curious to see how many of you still have that Hidden Valley trauma tucked away. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the DNA of Agent 47, hit that like button like a well-timed fiber wire and subscribe to join our agency. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss our next tactical breakdown. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you're doing it right, they'll never even know you were there. In 2026, we've seen stealth games evolve into these sprawling, hyper-realistic simulations of the world. We have the World of Assassination trilogy, which is a magnificent achievement in systemic design. But even with all that modern polish, there is something, a ghost in the machine, that they haven't quite been able to recapture. To find it, you have to go back to 2004. You have to go back to a rain-slicked hotel room in Paris. You have to go back to Hitman Contracts. Contracts is arguably the most unique entry in the entire franchise because of its framing device. This isn't a linear story about a hitman on a job. It's a psychological autopsy. We find Agent 47 at his most vulnerable, gut shot, bleeding out, and hallucinating. This isn't just a clever way to justify remaking levels from the first game. It's a brilliant stylistic choice that dictates every frame of the experience. Because we are playing through 47's dying memories, the world is distorted. It's darker than it should be. The colors are washed out, replaced by a palette of bruised purples, sickly greens, and industrial grays. It feels like every mission is taking place at 3 a.m. during the worst storm of the century. This isn't a world where people live. It's a world where people go to die. Whether you're in the snow-blinded tundra of Kamchatka or the neon-soaked, claustrophobic alleys of Hong Kong, there is a pervasive sense of dread that modern games, with their bright, clear instinct modes, just don't replicate. We cannot talk about the atmosphere of this game without bowing down to the work of Jesper Kyd. If Silent Assassin was his orchestral epic, Contracts is his industrial nightmare. In 2026, we're used to dynamic music that shifts when you enter combat. But Kyd's score here does something more profound. It creates a psychological state. Tracks like Hospitality or Winter Night aren't just background noise. They are rhythmic, pulsing heartbeats. They use these cold, synthesized textures mixed with haunting, distant vocals that make you feel utterly isolated. You're not a cool assassin here. You're a ghost. You are a professional killer operating in a world that is fundamentally broken. When that low, distorted bass kicks in while you're dragging a body through a meat locker, it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like a crime scene. On a gameplay level, Contracts is where the social stealth of Hitman finally matured. If Codename 47 was the experimental prototype and Silent Assassin was the ambitious but often frustrating sequel, Contracts is the refinement. This is where the suspicion meter finally started to feel fair. You learned that if you ran, people would look. If you got too close, they'd get nervous. It forced a sense of method acting on the player. You weren't just a guy in a suit. You had to inhabit the role of the waiter, the guard, or the eccentric guest. The level design in Contracts is some of the most pure in the series. Let's talk about Beldingford Manor. It is, to this day, a masterclass in Gothic level design. The way the rain lashing against the windows masks the sound of your movements. The secret passages behind bookshelves. The sheer tension of poisoning a milk bottle while a guard sleeps 5 feet away. And then there's the Meat King's party. Even 22 years later, this mission remains a high watermark for environmental storytelling. You're navigating a literal slaughterhouse filled with revelers in fetish gear, searching for a girl who, as you eventually find out, is already dead in a scene of stomach-churning horror. It's the darkest the series has ever gone. It's uncomfortable, it's visceral, and it uses the sandbox format to tell a story of human depravity that a cutscene never could. The game doesn't judge you. It just lets you exist in this filth. And that's what makes your eventual exit into the cold night air feel so rewarding. Technically, looking back from 2026, Contracts is a fascinating study in doing more with less. Built on the Glacier engine, it pushed the hardware of the time to its absolute limit. They used a specific post-processing bloom effect that gave everything a dreamlike, hazy glow. While bloom became a dirty word in the late 2000s, here it's used with surgical precision to hide the technical limitations of the PS2 and Xbox era. The physics were also a massive step forward. The way 47's signature silverballers felt, the way bodies reacted to the environment, and the introduction of more complex animations for the fiber wire, it all added a weight to the violence. It wasn't action movie violence. It was heavy, wet, and unpleasant. The Silent Assassin rating wasn't just a score. It was a ghost story you were writing. To finish a level like Traditions of the Trade without a single person knowing you were there, in a hotel filled with police and thermal cameras, remains one of the most satisfying brain burns in gaming history. So why does Hitman Contracts still command our respect in 2026? It's because it's a game with an identity crisis that worked in its favor. It's half remake, half sequel, and entirely atmospheric horror. It doesn't care if you like 47. It doesn't try to make him a hero or a savior. It presents him as a professional who who is staring into the void of his own subconscious. Modern Hitman is about the glamour of the kill. Contracts is about the grime of the kill. It reminds us that at the end of the day, Agent 47 isn't just a world traveler. He's a man who lives in the shadows, who operates in the places the world chooses to forget. It's a beautifully ugly, wonderfully depressing, and mechanically tight experience that proves you don't need 8K textures to create an unforgettable world. You just need a vision, a rainy night, and a very sharp kitchen knife. Ultimately, when we look back at the legacy of this franchise from the vantage point of 2026, Hitman Contracts stands as the series' most honest moment. It doesn't try to sell you on the globe-trotting glamour of being an elite assassin. It doesn't pretend that what 47 does is clean or noble. It's a game that forces you to sit in the dark, in the cold, and in the wet, staring at the moral vacuum of a life lived in the shadows. If the modern World of Assassination trilogy is a perfectly tailored, high-end Italian suit, then Contracts is the bloodstain on the cuff that you can't quite scrub out. It's a reminder that beneath the professionalism and the clockwork mechanics, there is a core of pure, unadulterated noir. It's a masterpiece of mood that proves technical limitations are no match for a singular, haunting vision. And on that note, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the grimy heart of 47's past, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel bypass the algorithm's security detail. If you want to see more retrospective essays on the games that shaped the industry, drop a comment down below. Be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next operation. We're going to keep digging through the digital archives to find the titles that still matter, long after the hype has faded. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp out there, and remember, always check the keyholes before you open the door. I'll see you in the next one.
Welcome to Hitman Blood Money, the 2006 crowning achievement developed by IO Interactive. While the Hitman series has since evolved into a massive, gorgeous modern trilogy, any true stealth fan will tell you that Blood Money is the dark, twisted soul of the entire franchise. It was the game that took a clunky, experimental stealth series and perfected the murder sandbox. So, fast-forwarding to today, does Blood Money still hold the crown as the ultimate assassination simulator, or has modern technology left it in the dust? Let's grab our fiber wire and find out. To truly understand why Blood Money is considered the holy grail of stealth action gaming, we have to look back at where Agent 47 came from. Because before 2006, playing a Hitman game wasn't just a test of patience, it was a test of survival against the game mechanics themselves. The original 2000 title Hitman, Codename 47, was a brilliant concept trapped in a digital prison. It gave us the core identity of the franchise: disguises, target assassination, and a bald clone with a barcode. But it lacked a save system, featured clunky gunplay, and if your disguise failed, the level devolved into a chaotic shooter. It was a rough draft, a masterpiece in theory, a nightmare in practice. Then came Silent Assassin and Contracts. These games laid down the holy laws of the franchise, introducing the coveted Silent Assassin rating and proper stealth mechanics. But let's be honest with ourselves. The stealth engine in these games was deeply paranoid. The NPC AI was so twitchy that merely walking slightly too fast past a guard in the wrong uniform would cause the entire map to open fire on you. It was less about creative problem solving and more about walking on eggshells. And that brings us to Blood Money. Where the earlier games felt restrictive and claustrophobic, Blood Money felt liberating. The levels before this were dark, gritty, and heavily linear. Blood Money took us to sunny California suburbs, a crowded Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans, and a high society Christmas party in the Rocky Mountains. It took the punishing, unforgiving blueprint of the early 2000s and refined it into pure, unadulterated gameplay gold. It didn't just iterate on the games that came before it. Before Blood Money, stealth games were mostly about hiding in shadows, memorizing guard patrol routes, and staying out of sight. IO Interactive looked at that and said, "What if you hide in plain sight instead?" This game perfected the social stealth mechanic. The moment you steal a guard's uniform, a waiter's apron, or a caterer's jacket, the entire level opens up to you. You aren't breaking into a fortress, you're an invited guest, as long as you act like you belong. But the real stroke of genius that separates Blood Money from its predecessors is the introduction of the accident system. In older games, you usually had to shoot your target or strangle them. In Blood Money, the world itself is a death trap. You can push a target over a balcony, poison their drink, rig a barbecue grill to explode, or replace a fake prop gun in an opera rehearsal with a real, loaded World War II pistol. The game rewards you for creativity. If you pull off a hit using an accident, the guards don't even realize a crime has been committed. They just wrap up the body, call the ambulance, and let you walk right past them. Achieving the coveted silent assassin rating by leaving absolutely zero evidence behind is one of the most satisfying feelings in all of gaming. Another reason Blood Money feels so legendary today is its sheer variety in level design. Modern games love to give you massive, bloated open worlds that feel empty. Blood Money gives you 12 tightly packed, distinct, highly detailed sandboxes. Every single level has an entirely different vibe, atmosphere, and strategic layout. The replay value is off the charts. You can play the same level 5 times and discover a completely different route, a new disguise, or a totally bizarre way to eliminate your target. It respects your intelligence by giving you the target and the tools, and then stepping back to let you cook. Blood Money drips with a cynical, dark comedy atmosphere. It leans heavily into a gritty, early 2000s noir aesthetic, framed by a brilliant narrative structure where a wheelchair-bound former FBI director recounts Agent 47's past hits to a journalist. To make your actions feel like they have weight, the game introduced the notoriety system. If you go into a mission guns blazing, get caught on security cameras, and leave witnesses alive, your notoriety meter spikes. In the next level, the world reacts. You'll see a newspaper article detailing your gruesome crimes, and guards will start recognizing you even through your disguises. It forces you to spend your hard-earned blood money on bribing the police, buying new identities, or upgrading your weapons with silencers and custom ammo. It wraps the entire campaign together in a way that makes you feel like a ghost trying to stay ahead of the law. And just like freedom fighters, IO Interactive brought back the legendary composer Jesper Kyd. His score here is a phenomenal blend of dark electronic beats, tense ambient synths, and epic classical arrangements, culminating in the use of Schubert's Ave Maria, which has since become the unofficial anthem of the entire franchise. Let's look past the nostalgia for a second. If you boot up Blood Money today on PC or modern consoles via HD collections, it's going to show its age. The control scheme is distinctly mid-2000s. The movement can feel a bit stiff, the menu navigation for inventory is clunky, and gunplay, if things go wrong, feels loose and awkward compared to modern third-person shooters, and the guard AI can sometimes be hilariously unpredictable. They might ignore a suspicious noise 1 second, and then instantly spot you through a wall the next. But despite those retro quirks, the core loop is absolutely timeless. Because the game focuses entirely on player freedom and puzzle-like level design rather than cinematic hand-holding, it feels incredibly liberating to play today. There are no mini-maps holding your hand with objective markers, no assassin vision showing you exactly where to go, and no endless radio chatter telling you how to solve a puzzle. You have to use your own eyes, your own brain, and your own intuition. And that is why Hitman Blood Money remains an absolute titan of the stealth genre. It took a brilliant concept and executed it flawlessly, setting a gold standard that games are still trying to live up to today. But I want to know what you guys think. What is your absolute favorite hit in this game? Was it ruining the suburban birthday party, or did you drop a chandelier on someone at the Paris Opera? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your favorite stealth stories. If this look back at the glory days of Agent 47 brought back some great gaming memories, please smash that like button. It really helps beat the algorithm and gets this video out to more classic gaming fans. If you want more in-depth reviews, retrospectives, and deep dives into the titles that shaped our gaming lives, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a hit. A huge thank you to all the channel members for keeping the lights on around here. Until next time, execute the contract, leave no trace, and I'll see you in the next video.